From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the new look Fox 8 Studios, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us wherever you find and listen to your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell notification button. You get an update every time we upload a new podcast. New look, who dis, Sean?
Well, hey, I just got to say, how y'all like us now? I mean, come on now. Look, y'all been leaving some comments in the comment section over the last couple of months as we transitioned from 1 to 2 to 3 to now our fourth different look. We're getting closer and closer to how we want this podcast to look. And you see the nice kind of setup here. So let us know what you think of the new look. And we're happy. Nice and cozy in here now to talk some ball and talk some Saints. And like Sil said, if you are not a subscriber, be sure to subscribe to this video. If you watch our videos consistently, be sure to add to our subscriber count by subscribing. Of like, share, rate, review. If you get the audio version, wherever you get your podcasts, all good here at Fox 8. And the Saints are in a different kind of mood this Wednesday as opposed to last Wednesday.
That they are, and we're heading into week 9 now. They're taking on the Bears. And Sean, Chase Daniel, who's known for doing film studies on Twitter, he, as a lot of folks have seemingly got into recently, he tagged you in it, and I want to hear more about that.
Well, yeah, and honestly, this was not what I had planned for this podcast today. The second topic, which we'll get to, is what I had really planned for this podcast today, but when Chase Daniel was here for a few seasons, and it was kind of he was here, then he left, and he came back, and he left again. I dealt with him a little bit. I don't know if he tagged me based off of our past interaction or the fact that he knew I worked in Saints, covering the Saints. Whatever the case may be, I was glad he did it. And when a former Saints quarterback or a former NFL quarterback tags you in a video, of course you take it serious, which I did. And we have a podcast, so let's talk about it. First off, thanks for tagging me. I feel like I have to comment. And look, his thesis was Derek Carr is not the problem. I 1,000% agree. This is based off of not the Indianapolis game. This was more of he actually did a counter film study to JT O'Sullivan's film study after the Jacksonville loss, saying it's not all on Derek Carr. And when I watched both film studies, I thought I came away feeling both guys made valid points. But when I watched JT O'Sullivan's film study, and I said it on the podcast, I felt like I saw fully what was on display, and it was a total offensive operation issue, not just one player, whereas fans took it as, or viewers took it as, and other media took it as, no, it's Derek Carr is the problem. Chase responded. Then Derek Carr followed up today or Sunday with arguably his best game of the season. So my response to Chase Daniel, and I hope he doesn't think I was the one that was saying he's the problem, because I have never once said, Derek Carr, you are the problem with this offense, because it's just not true. It's not true. If you really watch Derek Carr, it's just not true. And frankly, when you have people that aren't a fan of a certain player, they're going to comment a lot more. But no serious person within the Saints organization or even covering the team felt like problem number one was Derek Carr. That's just straight up facts. No one felt that, because let's be fair, the Jacksonville game was bad, but let's just go through each game. Tennessee, he was good enough to win. Carolina, he wasn't perfect, but he was certainly good enough. Green Bay, if he finishes the game, they're winning. I mean, they're winning that game. So that seems to get lost in the wash a little bit. So let's just say, if that's the case, and you're 3-0 at that point. Tampa Bay game, look, and I'm not going to give him a pass for the injury thing because he pushed to come back, but he didn't look right. He did not play well. Thought he played well enough against New England. Houston, he put up some numbers, but they couldn't finish in the red zone, so I'm going to call that game an average game. And then, of course, Jacksonville, it was on the brink of disaster after the pick six, but he rallied them back. So it was he wasn't good, but it wasn't the disaster it could have been. And I keep saying this because people are brushing over it. The worst game I ever saw Drew Brees play was on a Thursday night against Atlanta when he threw 4 picks. I believe it was 2012. Those Thursday night games are not good. they can be disastrous. And certainly that was one for Derek Carr until he flipped the script and was able to rally. And then, of course, he followed that up with, I thought, his best game as a Saint in Indianapolis. Now he's in the midst of 3 straight 300-yard passing games. And I think this could be, emphasized could be, the start of the breakthrough. It could be them just hitting their stride. It could be the start of some consistency on the offensive side of the ball. But we can't fully go there yet until everyone demonstrates that consistency. And you can't demonstrate consistency, you get to the next game. And the next game is coming on Sunday against a defense that's ranked, 27th in allowing points allowed right now. They just made the big trade for Montez Sweat. But the point is, you're going to always have... When we talked about the hierarchy of quarterbacks in the NFL, we put Derek Carr comfortably in that Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, I guess before this year, Tannehill-ish type
that
quarterbacks.
12 to 16 range.
Yeah. I think I had him at 12 or 13.
So did I.
And the Saints paid him as the 13th highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
It made sense.
So I guess my point is, when you're that, so you're consistently, in my opinion, a good quarterback, haven't been great, certainly not elite. There's always going to be a little bit out there that says, because there's a little bit of doubt that you aren't the guy. And he got dumped on after the Thursday night loss. And that JT O'Sullivan film breakdown, certainly, he did not hold back. But I'll say it again. There are certain people that felt like by saying he's the problem, that the only way to fix the problem is to bench Derek Carr. It's not happening. Because I think there's some people out there that want that or think that's the best case scenario. And I'm just here to tell you, they didn't go 4 years, $150 million, and go all out to get Derek Carr here to give up on it after 8 games, especially since, as we just laid out, just go game by game. Has he been terrible? Has he been overall bad? At worst, he's been average. I think if you average it all out. And at best, he's been pretty good. So, and look, this is call it coincidence, whatever the case may be. Maybe not fair, but who cares? What did the Raiders do? The Raiders have just fired their coach, and they've already given up on the quarterback that, they didn't feel like Derek Carr was good enough. And look where they're at. And now Derek Carr is here. Certainly this isn't the way it's supposed to go through 8 games, but he's got his team in contention enough, first place. So, Chase, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And I don't believe he's the problem. And not just that, I think he's a guy that is pretty deliberate in trying to solve the problem. And I think he was pretty self-aware in fixing what he felt was bad, which was some decision-making, also some body language. And they got together, and they came out with their best offensive performance of the season. So, I don't my Twitter mentions blew up today because I got tagged in that. So, and the overwhelming majority of them were people that are basically not fans of Derek Carr, going after Chase, saying it's just one good game, one game. But that's fine. That's fine. That's fair. But organizationally, they're all in on Derek Carr, and they have never come close to benching him. And it's not going to happen unless there's some sort of injury. So, and no one wants that, knock on wood right there. So, thank you, Chase, for providing this podcast topic, because I thought it was a brilliantly done film study. I do a lot of film study myself, and you did a nice job of kind of drawing out the progression of where each play is supposed to go. I thought it was very well done, so good job with that. And I'm with you, man. He is not the problem, and certainly feels like not only have they identified the problem, but maybe it's one game, bad defense, but maybe we're getting closer and closer to a permanent solution, which is shorter menu of plays. With fewer plays means there's easier to attack the adjustments, because you don't have such the volume of plays to get to. So but here's where I'm going to stop. I'm not ready to say they're back.
No.
I need to see a couple more weeks of this to say, all right, this offense has hit their stride. They are rolling. But make no mistake about it, Derek Carr was not the biggest problem, and everyone understands that. Everyone in the organization understands that. But he had his share of the blame in certain games.
Friend of the show, Chase Daniel, giving us some content to talk about on this Wednesday.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked about how Derek Carr is average right now. I mean, the Saints are too with a 4-4 record, and Denny Green said way back in the day they are who we thought they were. So that's the case right now. Are you surprised that with that middle of the pack record right now that they didn't go out to get any help from the trade block this as the deadline passed yesterday?
Yeah, well, this was going to be what we talked about today because there was a period of the post game Sunday into the Tuesday deadline where the development happened in Minnesota where Kirk Cousins suffered the injury and there was nothing ever that account that tweeted that is known for trolling. And if you saw the follow up to the initial troll account, the troll tweet about Jameis Winston linked to Minnesota, you knew he was full of what. But Jameis Winston's name was a hot name on the trade market because of some injuries, not just in Minnesota, but who knows where else. But I am not convinced Minnesota ever picked up the phone to say, hey, what do you want from him? What do you want for Jameis Winston? I am not convinced the Saints called other quarterback needy teams and said, hey, I got a quarterback you might want. So, and who knows, as far as Jameis' case, what the compensation would have been. I mean, to me, if it's a third-round pick, absolutely take a look at it, maybe even a fourth-round pick. But realistically, if you're talking about a fifth, sixth, or seventh-round pick for Jameis Winston, this is all hypothetical, obviously, whoever you could have gotten with that pick next year would not have been worth having a high-end backup in the present day in your system, like a guy like Jameis Winston certainly has. So they didn't, subtract anyone with Jameis Winston, who was the most obvious guy out there. And I will say this, even with the quote-unquote troll account, that line of thinking was not crazy to think that Minnesota would try to find a team that has a quarterback that has starts under his belt, and Jameis Winston certainly fits that bill. But it never happened, and I'm not even convinced it even got to first base, if you will, with Winston. But on the other end, I sat here a couple of weeks ago, and I said, look, if they keep going down this path without any significant change, they don't have to be a big change, but they're going to probably hover around 500. And at that point, I made that announcement or statement with the idea that the Saints should go look and see what's available in the trade market. And Mickey Loomis said on his radio show that they had some conversations, they had some calls, but the trade never really materialized, never really got too far. Now, who knows what that means? Maybe it's a salary thing. Maybe it's a compensation thing. Maybe it's just, we might want this guy, we might not. I thought maybe a boost on the D-line. Maybe looking at something in terms of another guy, either receiver or a tight end. Maybe somebody in the secondary or a linebacker. Who knows? Just name a position. Just add some kind of depth. Who knows? D-line, offensive line maybe. But they never got there. So, and they really haven't made any significant change other than Trevor Penning.
Yep.
So we'll see if that I don't want to backtrack on my statement. The next two games all of a sudden got a lot easier with the backup quarterback situation.
I can't even remember the Bears quarterback's name for the life of me. It's just like
Tyson Bagent?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I always think his last name is Nugent. I don't know. I don't know why. Anyway, but
yeah. And so he's the guy making his third start, and then it's going to probably be was it Dobbs in Minnesota most likely by the time of that, or either him or Jaron Hall, or I guess Nick Mullins will be back off IR. So I hope I'm wrong with that. I hope the Saints don't make any moves, and they prove me wrong with that because at the time I said that, it certainly looked like hovering around 500 was where they're going to be. And let's be real, they're still very much 500. Yeah. And although they are tied for the lead in the NFC South, they are not leaders of the NFC South, and you have a lot more division games to go. Start this week, and build the consistency this week.
And them not making a trade kind of does fall in line with what we've been hearing the past few weeks with Dennis Allen saying we're close. So I mean they seem confident in what they have right now, and that doesn't surprise me, right? This is a group that's very tight knit.
Yeah, and you just wonder is the layout of the rest of their schedule, what's happening in their division, played into that? I hope not, because that can be a little bit of small time thinking if you want to be a contender. But Carr has said, DA has said, other players have said that they feel like they're getting closer, and specifically offensively. And if you look at the last quarter and a half against Jacksonville and the last 4 quarters against Indianapolis, hopefully they're getting there. But like I said, we're not going to call them there yet until they get there. That's just what 4-4 get you, and that's what an inconsistent offense gets you up to this point.
Any final thoughts as we head into the latter part of this week as the Saints prepare to take on the Chicago Bears?
No. But we get Friday. We're gonna talk some LSU Bama as well when we get there Friday, because that's too big of a game to ignore. But as for the Saints, vibe is good, not perfect. Got a winnable game this week. You just gotta do not relax.
Mm-hmm.
If anything else, be more urgent about being on time, executing, practicing correctly. Do not blow this opportunity against a very winnable game against Chicago.
History is on the Saints' side in the Superdome against the Bears. The Bears have not won a game in the Superdome since 1991. Woo. So I'll take the Saints this week.
Okay.
And I'll reiterate that on Friday when we get there. But for Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.